Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are going to get started here. Thanks for joining us. We're going to start with about 15 to 20 minutes of presentation. You'll hear from our four guests here, Kelly Hiller, Steve Schultz, Sarisha Bandla, and Rick Pettigrew. After they speak, we'll have about 15 minutes or so for questions. Because of technical issues, we're going to need you to put your questions in the chat, and then I will read the questions to our guests and facilitate that way when it comes time for questions. We'll do about 15, 20 minutes of questions after that, and we'll have a hard out around 2:45. Reminder that all of you may record this Zoom, so go ahead and hit record if you have not yet. And afterwards, we will also send it out as a file, as well as send out our news release corresponding with this. With that, I will turn it over to our host, Kelly Hiller.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kelly Hiller. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer here at Purdue University. This past July, on the 88th anniversary of her mystery disappearance, the Archaeological, I have such an echo happening here. The Archaeological Legacy Institute and Purdue Research Foundation announced a remarkable joint effort to locate Amelia Earhart's lost aircraft and help her complete the heroic journey she began almost a century ago. Today we are here because we are 1 month away from the expedition's departure. The search, named the Teraya Object Expedition, is funded by private donations. This November, a field team organized by ALI will travel by sea to the Pacific island of Nikumaroro to investigate a visual anomaly named the Teraya Object, as seen in satellite and other imagery of the island's lagoon, to confirm whether or not that is Earhart's plane. Nikumaroro is located approximately halfway between Australia and Hawaii. Amelia Earhart's connection to Purdue runs deep. In the 1930s, President Edward Elliott met Amelia Earhart at a conference, and they had a conversation. President Elliott at the time had observed that women were not staying at the university and not completing their education, and felt like Amelia Earhart, with her audacious, adventure-filled focus on life, could definitely make an impact here at our university. She became a career advisor to women, an advisor to the aeronautics department, and plus had access to the only university airport at that time. As a part of pioneering aeronautical research, Earhart's plane was funded by the Purdue Research Foundation, also known as the Flying Laboratory. It was a Lockheed Electra 10E airplane, and it was funded through the Amelia Earhart Fund for Aeronautical Research. The plane was specifically outfitted for long-distance flights, and Earhart used it to circumnavigate the globe and set a record for a long-distance flight. Earhart intended to give the plane to Purdue University upon her return, so it could further scientific research within aeronautics. Although she never returned, the Purdue-Earhart connection still remains strong. Her legacy as a valued Boilermaker continues to live on campus through facilities, programs, and clubs. This year, Purdue opened the Amelia Earhart Terminal right here in West Lafayette, which has resumed commercial service at the country's first university airport. The Electra disappeared on July 2nd, 1937, and has never been recovered. However, a vast amount of circumstantial evidence has been gathered, largely by the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery for over the last 40 years, supporting the Nikumaroro hypothesis. This theory suggests that Earhart and her navigator, Fred Noonan, did not crash at sea, but instead landed on this uninhabited island where they were marooned and subsequently perished. The expedition is planned to depart by plane from the Earhart Terminal in West Lafayette, Indiana, and then proceed by sea from Majaro in the Marshall Islands. We're expected to depart on that island from November 5th and spend 5 days on Nikumaroro inspecting the Teraya object and return to port on November 21st. Joining me today to discuss this expedition are Rick Pettigrew, the president of the Archaeological Institute, Sarisha Bandla, commercial astronaut, expedition member, and a member of Purdue's Cradle of Astronauts. And here in studio with me is Steve Schultz, Senior Vice President and General Counsel for Purdue University and the Purdue Research Foundation. I'm going to start with my first question to Rick. Rick, as the expedition leader, what are the new developments or insights that you can share now that we're just 1 month away from launch?
You know, we've been working on this project for 4 years, gathering a lot of evidence. And since the press release, the press conference in July at Purdue, we've been focusing a lot on preparations for the project, our logistical planning, gathering our team, and so forth. We really don't have new evidence to share with you. We have a lot of evidence, however, that's been gathered over the years. Our activities have been focused on getting ready for this project. It's a huge, complicated project, many people involved. With ALI as well as Purdue, we've been communicating a lot with the Kiribati government in the process of obtaining a government permit for our work on the island. So our focus has been really getting ready for this project. I don't think that I have any new insights. Of course, I pondered this project a lot, but I don't think it's any new insights. But I'm prepared to answer any questions you might have. So just let me know what you'd like to know.
So Rick, you've talked about there's no new evidence, but at this point, what makes you very confident that this expedition could finally prove it?
So again, Kelly, could you repeat that question so I can be sure?
Sure. What makes you confident that this expedition could prove that Amelia Earhart's plane is located there?
Right. So why am I confident?
Yes.
It's because of the evidence. I'm an archaeologist. I'm a scientist. I try to focus my attention on the evidence at hand and accounting for the evidence. It's not a question of what I believe or what I want to believe. It's a matter of how do we account for the evidence. There's such a huge amount of evidence that I believe we're on the right track. First of all, Tiger has gathered a huge body of evidence that Amelia and Fred ended their days on Nicaragua. Plenty of evidence. There's the radio bearing evidence. There are radio messages that were received. We have the Bevington object, which appears to be the landing gear remaining on the reef just 3 months after the disappearance. There are the bones found at what we now call the 7 site. A lot of evidence that points to Nicaragua. But more recently, in 2020, Michael Ashmore saw something in Apple Maps that he brought to everybody's attention. This is what we call the Tria object, which is a visual anomaly in the Nicaragua Lagoon. Initially, I didn't really think too much of it because we get lots of claims by people saying, hey, look at this, and almost always it turned out to be nothing really significant. But in this case, it did take me about a year, but eventually I came around to the idea that we needed to take a look at it. I invited Michael to come here to Eugene to a conference we had. He made a presentation. I was impressed, and within a few days after that, started working on the project. We gathered up many more satellite images, did historical research, found other imagery that relates to it, and I think we have a great body of evidence now that indicates primarily one thing. Now, we can argue about what this thing is, but the most important thing is we don't know what it is, and we think we might know what it is. And somebody has to go there and look. That's what I know for sure. Somebody has to go and look. We're going to go look and identify it. And if we're right, then we will, in fact, identify the lost Electra. We could be wrong, but I think the evidence is very, very strong that this is, in fact, what it is.
Thanks so much, Rick. Steve, I'm going to turn the next question to you. Can you walk us through what you feel were like the most compelling evidence or pieces of evidence that led Purdue to support this mission?
Sure, and you alluded to it, and Rick, of course, described it. Credit has to go to the International Group for Historic Aircraft Recovery, Tiger, for its, I think now 36 years of research, gathering evidence, both on the island and in archives, in archival research. So we're building on that, right? And then, of course, we have the Tria object. As an attorney, when I first heard about the Niku-Mororo hypothesis, also called the castaway hypothesis, I was impressed by the really incredible circumstantial case. But as Rick reminds us, the smoking gun has never been found, possibly until now. So I really think from the Purdue perspective, and the reason why I encouraged us to get behind it, well, it was really a twofold answer. One, the evidence is compelling, and I think we owe it to Amelia's legacy at Purdue to follow the evidence where it leads us and possibly close this chapter that the whole world wants to know about. And also, it seemed to me more technologically feasible than some of the other claims we've heard about over the years. In my 12 and a half years as general counsel at Purdue, I think we've heard about 6 or so claims that the Electra may have been found. But this one, in addition to the evidence, suggests that the Turaya object, it's located in the lagoon. And so purely from a pragmatic perspective, I think Purdue could get behind something that could go, as Rick says, go look at it at least. If it were a deep sea discovery, I don't think we would be as inclined to tag along. But here we can actually go, tag along, support ALI and Rick in the mission, and hopefully be part of the identification process.
Most certainly. Can you talk next about what the role that Purdue Research Foundation plays in this effort and why it was important for PRF to get involved?
Yeah, it's interesting. PRF has joined ALI really because of all that Amelia means to Purdue. And a lot of people are talking about that recently, including our students who got to go along to the trip to the Museum of Flight last week. And to potentially close this chapter that PRF began almost a century ago. And we're doing that. We're helping Archaeological Legacy Institute and Dr. Pettigrew through outreach and through fundraising efforts. So PRF's really sort of coming full circle. As you described, Amelia's job offer from President Elliott back in 1935 was twofold: come and be a career consultant for women students and also be the top advisor to the then fledgling aeronautical engineering program. But it also came with this promise to be able to continue her flying exploits out of Purdue Airport, which, as you said, was the only university airport in the nation at the time. So in those discussions, she shared her idea with President Elliott and others about this dream of being the first person, not just the first woman, but the first person to circumnavigate the globe by air around the equator. And President Elliott said, I think our research foundation might be able to help you with that, because I think there's probably some research pursuits that could accompany that endeavor. And so, as you said, they founded the Amelia Earhart Fund in Aeronautical Research. That fund was then used to gather donations, which were then given to Amelia in the form of a grant that she used to acquire and outfit the experimental specialized aircraft with Lockheed, the 10E Electra. So now there's not only this chance to be a part of potentially solving the greatest mystery of the 20th century, but maybe fulfilling Amelia's wishes of bringing the Electra back to Purdue, if we can identify it, if it's possible to extract it and bring it home. PRF wants to be a part of that. And again, come full circle.
For sure. Sarisha, I'm going to talk a little bit about the meaning of Amelia's legacy. For Amelia Earhart's legacy to continue to inspire to generations, what aspects of her story deeply resonate with you?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question, Kelly. So I think you mentioned earlier, Amelia Earhart had the courage to do these incredibly audacious things, and those acts alone inspired many. But what resonates with me the most is that she not only did these incredibly trailblazing things in aviation as a woman, as a first, but she spent time to hold the door open for more women to follow in her footsteps. Women in aviation at the time was incredibly rare. And as a aerospace engineer and as an astronaut, where we actually last November just hit 100 women that have gone to space. It is really inspiring to follow and see her story and continue to, carry the legacy of doing incredibly audacious things, moving the needle forward, but also holding the door open so that many more women can do those audacious things in their own way.
Most certainly. And you talked about, being a commercial astronaut. How do your experiences and skills uniquely position you to contribute to this expedition?
Yeah, so in my previous role, I actually supported as the engineer scientist doing microgravity research. So that was scientists doing field research, but in space. So it's very interesting to now do the same thing, being on board to support Rick and his team of scientists as we go investigate the Turaya object. But more so, not as a commercial astronaut, but as a Purdue aerospace engineer, I was given an incredible tool set and foundation to problem solve, which when you're going to remote places, whether it's space or whether it's the South Pacific, being able to in real time solve problems, make observations, work with your crew is incredibly important. And I got that tool set not only being a commercial astronaut, but I got that tool set while I was at Purdue studying aerospace engineering. So I'm incredibly proud of that skill set and have used it many times. And honestly, space is closer than where we're going in the South Pacific. So,
Wow, I never thought of it that way, but that's just crazy. All right, Trevor, do we have some media questions?
We do, and thank you everyone for your patience. I know there's some audio issues. We are working to get it adjusted, and we'll send out a file to you all anyway with that adjusted as well. So again, if you have a question, go ahead and drop it in the chat. Identify who you are and what your outlet is. The first question we have is for Rick, and I think it's a fair question. What are you most concerned about during the expedition? AKA, what keeps you up at night, Rick?
Well, it's a very complex job. I'm going to Nicaragua. It's a beautiful island, but there are many dangers there. You could slip and fall on the reef. There are sharks in the lagoon. I'm not terribly worried so much about that, but it is a very complex project. So we have only 5 days to work on the island. So we have to really work diligently, get everything done. So we're working to hone our plan. We know what we're going to do day by day. We want to be able to follow that plan and come home with the evidence that we want. So I don't really, it doesn't really keep me up at night so much. I'm pretty busy during the day though, working out all these details. So it's a challenge. It's a logistical challenge, but I think we're game for it. We're ready for it.
Great. Thank you, Rick. Next question we have, how can students work to support your expedition? What ways can students get involved? So particularly here at Purdue. Question probably for Rick. Or let's do Steve on this one.
Okay. Well, we had a very good recent example of students contributing to the effort. Rick pulled us together at the Museum of Flight in Seattle late last week, not just to be able to have a physical, tangible look at the twin of the Lockheed 10E Electra that's on display there, but to come together as a team for the first time. And we heard from the underwater archaeology team about their means and methods. We heard from our medic about some of the precautions we're going to need to take and things that we're going to need to be concerned about. We heard from a fellow veteran of Nicaragua who has been on an expedition with Rick several years ago about what it's like there. But from what the contribution that our students made was unique and very rewarding. They were able to share what Amelia means to Purdue from the student perspective. And I thought it was important for members of the expedition to understand that as we go on this quest, and I think they all appreciated it. I think back here now students can, by word of mouth, continue to talk about that legacy and what Amelia means. They see tangible evidence of her being here, with Earhart Hall, the terminal, and so forth. And so I think they can just follow our progress, talk it up, and be fans for us like they'll be cheering for the Purdue men's basketball team this year.
I think it's also important, real quick, Trevor, to note that Amelia Earhart was a president and founder of the 99s. And still to this day, we have a 99s chapter here at Purdue University. So that's also a definite direct connection. And I'm sure that group will be following closely.
Absolutely. And we had 3 members of the 99s as ambassadors on our trip last week. So it was great to have them. They did a great job.
For sure.
Next question. Rick, this is for you. If you confirm it is the plane, what happens next?
Well, if we confirm it's a plane, of course, we're going to be making a big announcement at some point, and then we're going to be making plans. The task here at hand is a very, very narrow, very focused one. Is it the aircraft or is it not? If it turns out to be that we're right and it's the aircraft, then we're going to be making plans to come back the following year and do a full-scale excavation. This is an archaeological project. So we're taking it in the same set of steps as an archaeologist would do on any project. You first investigate what it is you've got, what you need to do, and then you design a plan to go and do it. So we're going to design a plan to go and do a full-scale excavation to learn everything we can about the site itself, with the idea not only of gathering that information, but also the potential of examining the potential for recovery of the wreck and bringing it home. So those are the main ideas.
Again, you can submit your questions in the chat. Go ahead and throw your name in there, and as well as what outlet you're with. Next question is for Sirisha. How does this compare to going to space?
I will let you know when I get back. No. So it's interesting looking at some of the parallels. We can plan for the knowns, but there's always going to be some unknowns that we're going to have to work with the team when we get there. So there is, in terms of planning and preparing for this kind of expedition, I definitely see parallels for planning for trips to go to space. So it's been really good to use that experience and my experience there to contribute to the team. I'm helping Rick with the tech system that we'll have on the island. So looking at deploying tech in a remote area, again, has its challenges. Same with spaceflight. Here, there's some additional challenges of wanting to make sure we do no harm on the island, but also plan for any wildlife that will hopefully that does not interfere with our tech system. So there are some additional challenges actually to working here on Earth than in space that honestly I'm looking forward to tackling.
Could I point something out?
Yeah, go right ahead, Rick.
All right. It's kind of a point of interest, I guess. I believe it takes about 3 days to get to the moon. Sarisha, you can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe. But it takes 6 days to get to Nicaragua, twice as long. And of course, just as going into space, as Sarisha pointed out, we're going to need to be entirely self-sufficient. We'll be in direct communication. We're going to have internet connection via Starlink on both ships and on the island, but we're going to be on our own. We're not going to be able to go to the hardware store and get some spare parts.
Rick, you kind of touched on it. Our next question asks, what do the living arrangements look like on these boats?
We have 2 boats of about equal size. We have enough berthing space for 16 people altogether, 8 on each ship. We're going to have a total of 15 people, so we're going to be using most of that space, but equally divided between the 2 ships.
And then also along those lines, will there be diving on the expedition? And then will you be able to communicate with those on land during the expedition?
Yes, there will be diving on the expedition. The water there is very shallow, of course, but it's an underwater archaeology project because the site is underwater. It's very shallow water, but nevertheless, we will have archaeologists will be in their scuba gear to operate the equipment that they're going to have on the lagoon bottom on the site, such as the hydraulic dredge. Communication will be pretty straightforward. As I said, we have Starlink internet connection. We're going to set that up on the site itself, as well as having it on the ships. And then we'll have walkie-talkies so we can be in direct contact with the ships and with one another on the island.
The next, and again, continue to send in your questions in the chat, and we'll read those out. The next question is likely for Steve. There was some recent attention at the federal level in Amelia Earhart. Any indication that was from this expedition, or what is your comment on that?
I believe you're referring to President Trump's social media post last Friday. We all kind of wondered if there was a connection, but we aren't aware that he knew we were in Seattle talking about the expedition at the time. It was a bit surreal, though, to be all gathered around the twin of the Electra, looking at it when we heard about President Trump's message. By the way, one of the aspects of that message was he ordered the release of any classified material related to Amelia and her final flight. To our knowledge, there are no records. There are no such records that remain to be unclassified. However, I think the more key point that he made was really about how much Amelia's story still captivates the world. And we saw that firsthand on July 2nd when we made our announcement about joining Rick on the expedition. This is your area, Kelly, but I know from what you tell me that it generated unprecedented coverage. I think we're up to almost now 4,000 media placements of that story from July 2nd, and more than 4 billion impressions worldwide of that announcement. And that was, as you tell me, I think that was the single highest earned media day in Purdue history.
It's a record-setting day, that's for sure.
Record-setting day. So I would just say that we're grateful for the president's interest, and we hope that he continues to watch our progress in November. We'll keep him informed.
This is also probably a Steve question, but Rick, you may want to weigh in. Who has rights to the plane if it's found?
I can answer that, and Rick can weigh in. I think Rick will take care to speak to the special relationship that we need to maintain with the Republic of Kiribati, since Nikamororo is in Kiribati and we got their permission to go there. Consistent with Tiger expeditions, there's typically a understanding about the eventual curation of the artifacts that are found on the island. And as part of the application process that Rick described, we presented a proposal for what we would do with the artifacts. But to answer this direct question, I think as a matter of international law, maritime law, things that are within the that are discovered within the territorial waters of a sovereign country are normally under the dominion of the sovereign nation. Our appeal to Kiribati has been, given that this tragedy potentially caused our fates to intertwine, that we would seek to establish a long-term, we, Purdue, would seek to establish a long-term relationship with Kiribati. And in return, we would be honored if they would so decide to return the remains of the Electra to Purdue, which is what Amelia wanted, very clear in the record. Communications that she had with President Roosevelt, communications that her husband had with Purdue President Elliott, indicated that they wanted to return the Electra after the historic flight to Purdue to make a permanent exhibit. We would want to do that, and then we would seek to support Kiribati as part of that effort. We would make an investment and include, I think the plan would be to include the artifacts of the Earhart archives that we already have with this. And so that's been our approach. But short answer is Purdue does not have a legal claim on the plane because we gave the money to her in the form of it. The Purdue Research Foundation gave the money to her in the form of an outright grant that she then used to acquire the Electra from Lockheed. Nonetheless, I say my line is that we have an equitable claim to the remains of the Electra because of her intent to bring it back to Purdue as expressed at the time.
I could add a bit to that.
Go right ahead.
All right. Steve is, of course, very qualified to deal with the legal issue, and I'm not. I want to just make comment about the degree of interest on the part of the parties. We've already heard about Purdue's interest, of course, in Amelia Earhart and the aircraft. But I should point out that among the people of Kiribati, the Amelia Earhart story does have significance. And in fact, they do teach that part of their history in their schools. We weren't quite aware of that before, but when we went to Tarawa in June, we learned about that. They have an interest in that. It's part of their cultural history. And then with regard to things like curation, uh, Kiribati has a cultural museum, the Kiribati Cultural Museum, and the curator of that museum is actually going to be on our field team on the island. So we'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about their degree of interest in it. And our orientation is to work in partnership, in collaboration with those people. So any kind of curation arrangement would be done in that context, in the context of partnership and collaboration.
So,
So all three of you are going on the expedition. I'll turn this to Sarisha then. We have a question. Is there anything physically you are doing to prepare, similar perhaps to what you did for space exploration, or what physically are you preparing for this expedition?
Yeah, thank you for the question. So, just because, again, we're going out to a remote area, just being generally physically fit is important. Um, just generally making sure to work out every day if I can. Not anything intense, but what you'd normally do to keep fit. So, working out, taking care of your body, and also taking care of your mental health, getting sleep, so that we're all sharp when we're on the expedition.
Rick, question for you. How did you choose who was on the boat?
It's very complicated. First of all, consideration of what we're going to do and what kind of expertise we need to have with us. Such as certainly we need maritime archaeologists. And so one of the big issues was who was going to be serving as our archaeological team on the island. And I think we selected the world's best for that. So I'm very happy with that. There are protocol things, diplomatic things. I mean, Purdue is an important partner of ours, so we definitely want to have representatives from Purdue. And we want to have people who are able to handle the various tasks that we're doing, and that would include such things as setting up the technology equipment, for which Sarisa will be able to help us. And then, we have people who have experience on the island, such as Ren LaRocca that Steve mentioned. Having people there who have been on the island is very, very important. I think they can share that experience and knowledge with people, and we'll all benefit from that. We have a medic on board. It's very important for our safety plan to have someone there who can handle medical issues or injuries and so or that might take place. So it was a very diverse set of considerations, and we have a very diverse group. And I think we have all the expertise that we need to do a super job with this.
including storytellers, people who are going to
Oh, yeah, that's
capture the
right.
story while we're there, right?
That's right. Thank you very much, Steve. That was one category that I left out, but nevertheless, we're going to have four filmmakers with us. So telling the story of what we're doing is critically important, and that as reflected by the number of people that we're bringing with us who will be having cameras both in the air and below the water.
Rick, a follow-up to that question. We have a question. What are the ages of the people on the boat, if you had to guess an age range?
Wow. Okay, well, let's start at the upper end of that spectrum, and that would be me. I'm the old guy on board. And let's see now. I don't really think a lot about people's age, but I think that Sarisha may be the youngest one. Am I right, Steve? I think so.
It's my
No,
guess.
wait a minute. No, I think
Maybe
Ella, one of our
maybe Ella
filmmakers,
Van Cleeg,
is
yeah.
in her upper 20s.
Yeah.
So we range from the 20s to the 70s. It's quite a diverse group of people.
If this is probably a question for Rick, if something goes wrong, do you have a backup plan?
Well, that's a kind of very general question. I'll do the best I can. Many different things can go wrong. We're making every effort to prepare for all eventualities. We will adapt as necessary. Well, we have a lot of experience, certainly, with troubleshooting, with handling issues that come up. Sometimes people ask me if that maybe this relates to this question. Is it what we do if it's not the Electra? Well, we'll simply identify what it is and we'll document what it is and bring that information home. Otherwise, as Teresa pointed out, we have to be able to handle unexpected things that come up. And I think we've done everything possible to be ready, maybe not ready, but at least we'll be prepared to react to any situation that comes up.
Rick, probably another question for you. If the Taraya object has been there for decades, supposedly, why is it just now being explored?
I get I get this question from time to time. But the fact is that the Taraya object was first seen in the satellite imagery in 2020. That was only 5 years ago. So the object may have been there since 1937, but we didn't know about it until 2020. I didn't become focused on it until 2021 and began immediately working up ideas for this project. So from my perspective, that's pretty quick.
Next question, what condition do you expect the plane to be in? Rick, go right ahead. It's probably best for you as well.
Right. The plane is almost entirely made of aluminum, not considering the engine and the landing gear, which we don't expect to find at this site. But everything else, almost everything else is made of aluminum. There are a few iron and steel parts, such as the control cables are made of steel. But aluminum is a very durable metal. There have been other aircraft found in the Pacific in salt water made of aluminum that were almost pristine in terms of their integrity. Now, other people will say that chemical degradation can occur with aluminum. We can't be sure just exactly what we're going to be finding. However, the imagery that we have indicates that it's a very reflective object, which would tell me that the aluminum is largely intact. So based on what I've heard, what we've seen, I think it's very possible that we'll find an object that has a great deal of integrity. Its shape and configuration should be identifiable.
Can I ask Rick a question or have him make an observation that I think is helpful? Rick, talk a little bit about your supposition that it actually might be part of the landform at this point and how that came about. Can you hear me? Maybe you could.
So who are you directing that question to?
You, Rick.
All right, could you please repeat that?
Sorry, Rick. What you've hypothesized that the remains actually could be part of the landform at this point, and why that came about, why that may have come about.
All right, thanks, Steve. That's a very good point. The site sits alongside a sand spit. That sand spit projects westward from the south end of the Taraya Peninsula. In images, aerial photographs that we have from 1938, 1939, that sand spit basically was not there. There was a little bump of land there, not much. But very quickly after that time, the sand spit grew. Between 1938 and 1985, it grew from a tiny little bump to this long finger that we see in the pictures today. Something happened there, I think. Based on my understanding of geomorphology, something changed in terms of the current at that spot. My hypothesis is that the object itself is large enough to have affected the current to such a point, such a degree that the sand spit developed because of the change in the current and creating a different situation such that the deposition of the sediment built up behind the object. And in the process, the object effectively became part of the landform. That's one reason why many people are confused by the fact that we're now pointing to something that somebody should have found already, right? So, but it's important to understand that the geophysical situation at that spot was quite different in 1937 than it is today. So what we're looking at today, when we look at that site, is very different from what it was in 1937, which is the reason why it could be buried in sediment Some have suggested that, well, wait a minute, the water there is very shallow. How could such a big object be lost in the sediment? Well, my point is that the depth of the water was greater at that spot, at that location, and has become shallower as a consequence of the deposition of the object and the building up of the sand spit around it.
Probably have time for one or two more questions. This one maybe for Sarisha, then Steve. If it is a positive identification and this hypothesis is true, that means that Amelia Earhart likely died on the island. Do you ever think about what it was like in her final moments back during that time?
Yeah, I don't, when I reflect on Amelia Earhart's journey, I don't focus on that final, her thoughts on that final um, unfortunate journey outside of what to study for the expedition. It is, for me, her legacy is much more than this final journey. She's done so much in her career for aviation and for women in STEM and aerospace that I don't focus so much on her final moments only. Um, but that being said, it is very, I'm struggling for these words because it is an emotional thing to do, is to go search for her aircraft to help not only continue on and tell her story, but bring hopefully closure to one of aviation's greatest mysteries that resonates not only with me as a woman in aerospace, but me as a Purdue alumni and me as someone that wants to continue in her footsteps to do these courageous things that no one else would do.
Yes, I agree with Sarisha. It's very sad to think about. And I choose to reflect on the attribute for which Amelia is probably most known, and she actually wrote a poem about it in her earlier years called Courage. She might have been one of the most courageous Americans who ever lived, and I just choose to think that no matter what her end was and how that came about, that she would have faced it with great courage, as she did in all things.
All right. We have one final question, but I think we can wrap it into Kelly's. How will you tell everyone if the plane is found? And I think, Kelly, you can go ahead and wrap it up.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. I know here at Purdue University, we are very proud of this joint expedition between the Archaeological Legacy Institute and the Purdue Research Foundation. Just as Amelia kept flying, we will keep searching, and you can follow along on this journey with us by keeping an eye on the Purdue University social channels, as well as visiting the website amelia.prf.org. You can also follow along with ALI as well through archaeologicalchannel.org/Taraya. Purdue University will begin daily video updates on our channel starting November 3rd, and we will also have a daily media email that will go out, and we will make sure that that information is available.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and we will make sure that you all receive our news release. That was, you may have already received it. So thank you all for joining us today.